What if I told you that the solution to your financial struggles isn't found in working harder, saving more, or even finding a better job, but rather in something as simple as changing how you speak to your purse? You might think that sounds absurd, but stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover about the ancient wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn might completely transform your relationship with money forever. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Right now, as you're watching this, there are invisible currents of abundance flowing all around you. These aren't mystical fantasies or New Age wishful thinking, but principles that have been recognized by spiritual teachers and prosperity consciousness experts for over a century. The problem isn't that money doesn't want to flow to you. The problem is that most of us have been unconsciously blocking that flow through our words, thoughts, and beliefs about scarcity. Has this ever happened to you? You open your wallet or purse, see how little is there, and immediately feel that familiar knot in your stomach. Maybe you even say something like, "I'm broke," or "there's never enough." What you don't realize is that in that moment, you're actually giving instructions to your subconscious mind and, according to Scovel Shinn's teachings, to the very laws that govern supply and abundance. Florence Scovel Shinn discovered something remarkable over 100 years ago, that your purse isn't just a container for money, but a powerful symbol that communicates directly with what she called the invisible storehouse of divine supply. When you treat your purse as empty, speak to it with words of lack, or approach it with fear and anxiety, you're essentially placing a lock on the very channels through which abundance seeks to reach you. But here's where it gets interesting. Scovel Shinn taught that there's a specific way to transform your ordinary purse into what she called a magic purse, a living magnet that draws money and opportunities to you through the precise application of spiritual law. This isn't about positive thinking alone, but about understanding and working with the deeper principles that govern how consciousness creates material reality. The most powerful part of her teaching centers around a single affirmation, a carefully crafted sentence that, when spoken with understanding and faith, supposedly activates what she called the law of supply. This isn't just about repeating words mechanically, but about shifting your entire consciousness from scarcity to abundance, from fear to faith, from seeing yourself as someone who lacks money to recognizing yourself as a steward of infinite divine resources. What you're about to learn represents one of the most direct and practical applications of metaphysical prosperity principles ever developed. Whether you're currently struggling financially, comfortable but wanting more security, or simply curious about the connection between consciousness and money, this ancient wisdom offers a completely different approach to abundance than anything you've probably encountered before. The question isn't whether these principles will work for you. According to Scovel Shinn, they work according to spiritual law as consistently as gravity works in the physical world. The question is whether you're ready to suspend your disbelief long enough to test them in your own life, starting with something as simple as how you think about and speak to the purse you carry every day. Subscribe to this channel if you're drawn to this approach of combining spiritual principles with real-world application. There's so much more where this came from, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. The hidden truth behind this transformation lies in understanding that your purse represents something far more profound than most people realize. While others see it as just another accessory or practical necessity, you're about to discover how it can become a powerful bridge between your conscious desires and your subconscious programming. Every time you reach for your purse, open it, or even think about it, you're actually engaging in a conversation with the deepest levels of your mind where your beliefs about money and abundance live. This is where the real revelations begin to unfold. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you say about your purse and what you say about your overall financial situation. When you look into an empty or nearly empty purse and think or say, "There's nothing here," you're not just making an observation about physical objects. You're sending a direct message to the part of your mind that controls your financial decisions, your confidence in money matters, and even your ability to recognize opportunities when they appear. The journey from scarcity to abundance begins with recognizing that every word you speak carries vibrational energy that impacts not just your mental state, but according to Scovel Shinn's teachings, the very fabric of your external circumstances. This isn't about magical thinking or wishful manifestation. It's about understanding the profound connection between your internal dialogue and the patterns that show up in your life. When you speak with absolute faith and conviction, something remarkable happens behind the scenes of your everyday experience. Think about the last time you made a decision based on complete certainty rather than hope or fear. Remember how that felt different, how your actions flowed more naturally, how obstacles seemed to dissolve rather than multiply. That same energy, that same unwavering inner knowing, is what Scovel Shinn identified as the catalyst that causes outer circumstances to rearrange themselves. It's as if the universe responds to the frequency of your conviction, opening pathways that were previously invisible, releasing resources that seemed permanently blocked, creating connections that appear almost miraculous in their perfect timing. The impact of this understanding goes far beyond just attracting more money into your life. When you begin treating your purse as a living symbol of infinite supply rather than a reminder of limitation, you start to rewire decades of unconscious programming about worth, deserving, and the nature of abundance itself. This shift in perspective begins to influence every financial decision you make, every opportunity you notice, and every way you interact with money in your daily life. Now, I want to go even deeper into this fundamental principle because what happens next in this process is where most people either break through to a completely new level of financial flow or remain stuck in the same old patterns of lack and struggle. The difference comes down to understanding exactly how to speak to your purse in a way that commands your subconscious mind to accept new instructions about your financial reality. Write in the comments, "My purse is ready for transformation," if you're beginning to see how this symbolic relationship could change everything about your money story. The breakthrough realization that changes everything is recognizing that your financial struggles aren't actually about money at all. They're about flow. Picture abundance as a river that naturally wants to reach you. But somewhere along the way, debris has accumulated, creating dams that block the current. The remarkable discovery is that you're not standing by an empty riverbank. You're standing by a river that's being artificially constrained by obstacles you've unknowingly placed in its path. This perspective shift reveals something profound about your current financial reality. When you say, "I'm broke," or "I can't afford this," you're not describing a permanent condition or an unchangeable truth about your life. You're describing a temporary blockage, a momentary interruption in what should be a natural flow of resources and opportunities. The difference between these two interpretations determines whether you approach your situation with defeat or with the strategic mindset of someone who simply needs to identify and remove the obstacles. Behind the scenes of your everyday money decisions, your consciousness is operating like a sophisticated filtering system. Every fear-based thought about finances, every resentful feeling about others who have more, every habitual phrase about lack becomes an instruction to your subconscious mind to narrow the channels through which abundance can reach you. It's as if you're unconsciously installing smaller and smaller pipes in a plumbing system, wondering why the water pressure keeps decreasing. The hidden truth is that consciousness doesn't just observe your financial reality, it actively creates it through a continuous process of mental programming. Each time you declare yourself broke, you're essentially giving your subconscious mind an order to find evidence that supports that declaration. Your brain, being the incredibly efficient pattern recognition machine that it is, begins filtering out opportunities, overlooking resources, and focusing attention on everything that confirms the story of limitation you've been telling yourself. This programming happens so automatically that most people never realize they're doing it. The impact extends far beyond just missing opportunities. It actually changes how you carry yourself, how confidently you negotiate, how willing you are to invest in yourself, and how easily you recognize when abundance is trying to reach you through unexpected channels. the shadow of scarcity thinking follows you into every financial decision, every business conversation, every moment when money could flow more freely. What's truly revelatory is understanding that these mental padlocks you've placed on the gates of abundance can be removed just as deliberately as they were installed. The transformation begins the moment you realize that your words aren't just describing your financial situation. They're actively shaping it. Every declaration of lack is a command. Every expression of fear is an instruction. Every statement of limitation is a directive to your subconscious to make that limitation real. Now, the question becomes how to reverse this process, how to systematically remove these unconscious blocks and reopen the channels through which your natural abundance wants to flow. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to remove my blocks," if you're beginning to recognize how your own words might have been creating the very limitations you want to overcome. The transformation happens faster than most people expect because the stream of abundance was never actually turned off. It was only temporarily redirected around the obstacles you unknowingly created. Think of it like a garden hose that's been kinked. The water pressure behind the blockage builds up, waiting for the moment when the kink is released. When that happens, the flow doesn't gradually increase. It surges back to full force almost instantly. This is where your purse becomes more than just a symbol. It becomes an active tool for retraining your subconscious mind to expect fullness instead of emptiness. Every time you consciously choose to see it as connected to infinite supply rather than limited resources, you're performing a small but significant act of mental reprogramming. Your subconscious mind learns through repetition and emotional intensity, and each positive interaction with your purse creates a new neural pathway that supports abundance thinking instead of scarcity patterns. The journey from blocked to flowing requires something that might surprise you: absolute consistency in your internal dialogue. This is where most people unknowingly sabotage their own progress. They'll spend the morning doing positive affirmations about abundance, blessing their purse, and feeling genuinely optimistic about their financial future. Then, by afternoon, when they're faced with a bill or an unexpected expense, they slip back into the old patterns of worry, complaint, and declarations of financial stress. A like on this video means a lot because it tells me this content resonated with you, and it also helps more people discover this approach to abundance when they're searching for it. Behind the scenes of your consciousness, this inconsistency creates what's essentially a mixed signal to your subconscious mind. It's like trying to program a computer with contradictory commands. The system becomes confused and defaults to whatever pattern has been most deeply ingrained, which for most people is the scarcity programming they've carried for years. Your subconscious doesn't understand that you were just being realistic when you complained about money in the afternoon. It simply receives and acts on whatever instructions you give it most consistently. The hidden truth about this process is that your subconscious mind is always listening, always recording, always adjusting its programs based on your predominant thoughts and words. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't distinguish between serious declarations and casual comments, and it doesn't understand sarcasm or temporary emotional outbursts. When you say, "I can't afford this," even as a throwaway comment, your subconscious treats it as a factual update to your financial reality programming. This revelation changes everything about how you approach your daily relationship with money conversations. Every casual remark about being broke, every worried discussion about finances, every moment of financial fear becomes an opportunity to either reinforce limitation or redirect toward abundance. The impact of maintaining this consistency extends far beyond just changing your thoughts. It literally rewires your brain's default responses to financial situations. Now, the question becomes how to maintain this unwavering consistency even when faced with real financial challenges and legitimate concerns about money. Write in the comments, "Consistency is my new superpower," if you're ready to commit to aligning every single money conversation with abundance instead of lack. The most profound shift in this entire transformation occurs when you stop seeing yourself as someone who needs money and start recognizing yourself as someone who manages money. This isn't just a semantic change, it's a complete revolution in how you approach every financial decision, every money conversation, and every interaction with abundance itself. When you operate from the beggar mindset, you're constantly asking, hoping, wishing for money to come from somewhere outside yourself. But when you step into stewardship consciousness, you begin managing resources that you understand are already connected to an infinite source. This reframe changes everything about your relationship with your purse, because you're no longer approaching it as a container that might be empty or full depending on external circumstances. Instead, you're treating it as a management tool for resources that are fundamentally unlimited. A steward doesn't panic when the visible supply appears low because they understand their role is to wisely manage the flow, not to create the source. The source exists independently of their management abilities, but their stewardship determines how effectively that source can express itself through their particular circumstances. Behind the scenes of this mindset transformation, something remarkable happens to how you perceive money itself. Instead of seeing it as this separate, sometimes scarce commodity that you have to chase or compete for, you begin recognizing it as energy in motion, as the visible expression of invisible creative force flowing through economic systems, relationships, and opportunities. This perspective dissolves the artificial separation between spiritual principles and practical financial matters that keep so many people stuck in either poverty consciousness or guilt about wanting material abundance. The journey into this deeper understanding reveals that money responds to consciousness the same way that any energy responds to the intention and frequency of whoever is directing it. When you welcome money without the toxic combination of fear and guilt that most people carry around finances, when you receive it as a natural expression of value exchange rather than something you have to deserve or prove worthy of, the entire dynamic shifts. Money begins moving toward the kind of consciousness that can receive it gracefully and use it wisely rather than hoarding it desperately or spending it compulsively. This revelation impacts every aspect of how you handle your finances because you're no longer operating from the assumption that money is inherently separate from or opposed to spiritual principles. The hidden truth is that money becomes a form of spiritual practice when you approach it as energy that wants to flow, circulate, and create value rather than stagnant currency that you accumulate and protect. Your purse becomes the physical symbol of this flowing energy rather than a fortress protecting scarce resources. Now, understanding this energetic nature of money opens up an entirely new way of thinking about how to work with your purse as an active participant in this circulation of abundance. Write in the comments, "I am a steward of infinite flow," if this shift from scarcity to stewardship resonates with how you want to approach your financial life. The transformation deepens when you begin understanding money not as a commodity to be pursued, but as a messenger carrying information between different levels of reality. Every dollar that flows into your life arrives carrying a specific energy signature, a particular vibration that reflects the consciousness from which it originated and the consciousness that's receiving it. When money comes through channels of fear, desperation, or manipulation, it carries that energy and tends to leave just as quickly as it arrived. But when money flows through channels of value creation, genuine service, and conscious stewardship, it arrives with a completely different energetic quality that tends to multiply and circulate more freely. This perspective revolutionizes how you think about receiving money because it removes the guilt and unworthiness that block so many people from accepting abundance gracefully. The old programming tells you that wanting money is selfish, that accumulating wealth somehow takes from others, that spiritual people shouldn't be concerned with material prosperity. But when you recognize money as a messenger of creative energy, seeking expression through wise stewards, receiving it becomes an act of spiritual responsibility rather than material greed. You're not hoarding resources. You're accepting a role in the larger circulation of abundance that benefits everyone. Behind the scenes of this understanding lies one of the most practical spiritual laws you'll ever encounter, the law of preparation. This principle operates with mathematical precision in every area of life, but nowhere is it more immediately observable than in financial matters. When you prepare space in your consciousness for abundance, when you make room in your thoughts and words and expectations for money to flow easily, that preparation creates an irresistible invitation for resources to manifest. It's like setting a table for expected guests. The act of preparation itself signals readiness and creates the conditions for fulfillment. The hidden truth is that most people are unconsciously preparing for the opposite of what they claim to want. They prepare mentally and emotionally for struggle, for bills they can't pay, for opportunities that won't come, for limitations that feel permanent. Every worried conversation about money, every fearful glance at bank balances, every declaration of financial stress is an act of preparation, just preparation for more of the same scarcity they're trying to escape. Your heart, when locked by fear, and your tongue, when speaking lack, are literally telling the universe there's no room prepared for abundance in your experience. The impact of consciously reversing. This preparation process extends far beyond just changing your thoughts. When you deliberately prepare room in your consciousness for money to flow easily, when you speak as someone who expects abundance rather than shortage, when you approach your purse as a symbol of prepared space rather than evidence of limitation, you're engaging in what amounts to spiritual architecture, building the invisible structures that determine what can manifest in your visible reality. Now, understanding how to properly prepare this inner space for abundance leads us directly to the most practical application of everything we've discussed. Write in the comments, "I am preparing room for abundance," if you're ready to consciously create space in your consciousness for money to flow more freely. The most elegant way to understand how abundance actually moves is to picture money as water seeking its natural course. Just as a river doesn't struggle or strain to reach the ocean, money flows along the path of least resistance toward consciousness that offers the clearest, most open channel. This isn't about forcing or manipulating circumstances. It's about understanding the natural mechanics of how resources move through the world and positioning yourself accordingly. The transformation happens when you stop thinking of money as something you have to chase down, corner, and capture through sheer effort, and start recognizing it as energy that actively seeks expression. Trust in the inexhaustible nature of air. When you circulate money freely, you demonstrate trust in the inexhaustible nature of divine supply. Behind the scenes of this circulation, understanding lies the approach to what Florence Scovel Shinn called the ultimate purse magnetism technique. This isn't about clever visualization or complicated manifestation methods. According to her teachings, there exists one specific sentence that, when spoken with understanding and conviction, creates an irresistible magnetic field around your purse and your entire financial reality. This sentence supposedly contains the exact vibrational frequency that aligns your consciousness with the universal laws governing abundance flow. The hidden truth about this magnetic sentence is that its power doesn't come from the words themselves, but from the consciousness behind the words. When spoken by someone who truly understands the principles we've been exploring, the inexhaustible source, the circulation nature of abundance, the role of consciousness in creating financial reality, these words become what she described as a divine decree that the universe must honor. The sentence acts like a tuning fork, creating resonance between your individual consciousness and the larger patterns that govern how resources move through the world. The journey to this magnetic state requires everything we've covered: breaking free from scarcity hypnosis, understanding your role as steward rather than beggar, recognizing money as energy in circulation, and aligning with principles that operate beyond visible appearances. Only when your consciousness is prepared to hold this truth without contradiction does the sentence carry its full, transformative power. Now, we approach the moment where all these principles crystallize into the exact words that will serve as your daily practice for maintaining magnetic abundance consciousness. Write in the comments, "I am ready for magnetic abundance," if you've followed this journey and feel prepared to receive the specific sentence that supposedly transforms your purse into a magnet for prosperity. The culmination of everything we've explored arrives in 3 precisely crafted declarations that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered create what she called irresistible magnetic pull around your financial reality. Divine supply flows to me now. My purse is a magnet for money. Every bill and coin it receives multiplies under grace in perfect ways. When you speak these words with the consciousness we've been building, you're not pleading with the universe or trying to convince yourself of something untrue. You're issuing instructions to your subconscious mind while simultaneously aligning with what she believed were universal principles governing abundance flow. The transformation happens through understanding that this isn't about forcing circumstances to change through willpower or positive thinking alone. According to her teachings, these words create what amounts to a standing order to the law of attraction, establishing your consciousness as a clear receiver for financial opportunities, unexpected income, and resources that align perfectly with your needs. The phrase, "under grace in perfect ways," ensures that money arrives through harmonious channels that benefit everyone involved rather than through struggle, manipulation, or anyone's detriment. Behind the scenes of this magnetic declaration lies the principle of layered truth programming. Instead of relying on a single affirmation that might be contradicted by doubt or circumstances, you build what Scovel Shinn called an unbreachable structure through multiple reinforcing statements. Money comes to me now under grace in perfect ways establishes the timing and manner. Every channel is open, removes limitations on how abundance can reach you. The substance of God flows to me freely, connects you to infinite source rather than finite resources. The hidden truth about this layered approach is that it addresses different aspects of consciousness that might harbor resistance to abundance. Some people can accept that money might come eventually, but struggle with now. Others can believe in gradual improvement, but resist the idea of multiple channels opening simultaneously. By speaking to each potential point of resistance with specific declarations, you're systematically dismantling the complex web of limitation beliefs that have been blocking your financial flow. The journey through these declarations isn't about mechanical repetition, but about genuine alignment with each principle they represent. When you declare that every channel is open, you're training your awareness to notice opportunities that were previously invisible. When you affirm that divine substance flows freely to you, you're dissolving guilt and unworthiness that would otherwise create resistance in the receiving process. Now, understanding how these layered declarations work together brings us to the exact method for weaving them into your daily consciousness until they become your automatic mental programming around money. Write in the comments, "Every channel is open for me," if you're ready to begin speaking these declarations as your new financial reality rather than hopeful wishes. The most insidious barrier to abundance lies buried in seemingly innocent childhood memories. Those casual family conversations where money was discussed with resignation, worry, or moral judgment. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are greedy. You have to work hard for every penny. These phrases, repeated by well-meaning parents and relatives who genuinely believed they were teaching practical wisdom, actually installed what Florence Scovel Shinn identified as poverty programs deep in your subconscious mind. The hidden truth about these inherited beliefs is that they weren't passed down as neutral information about how money works. They were transmitted as moral teachings wrapped in false virtue. Being satisfied with less was presented as noble. Wanting more was suggested as selfish. Struggling financially was portrayed as honest, while prospering easily was viewed with suspicion. These messages created a complex web of guilt, limitation, and resistance around abundance that now operates automatically in your adult consciousness, sabotaging prosperity even when you consciously desire it. Behind the scenes of your current financial patterns, these childhood programs are still running like background software, influencing every money decision through unconscious beliefs you probably don't even realize you carry. When you hesitate to charge what you're worth, when you feel guilty about spending money on yourself, when you automatically assume you can't afford opportunities, You're operating from programming installed decades ago by people who themselves had been programmed by previous generations of scarcity thinking. The transformation out of this inherited limitation requires what Scovel Shinn called record smashing, a deliberate, forceful rejection of every false belief about money that was planted in your consciousness without your conscious consent. I smash the record of lack. I dissolve every belief in poverty. I erase the false law that money is scarce. I renounce every lie about my worthiness to receive. This isn't gentle affirmation, but powerful denial. A conscious demolition of mental structures that have been limiting your financial potential for years. The journey through this denial process can feel surprisingly emotional because you're not just changing thoughts, you're breaking inherited family patterns that may have existed for generations. Some part of you might resist this transformation because staying limited feels like loyalty to your upbringing. But according to these teachings, breaking free from poverty consciousness actually honors your family by proving that financial struggle was never necessary. It was simply the result of not knowing these principles. Now, understanding how to systematically dismantle these inherited limitations brings us to the specific technique for replacing them with unshakable abundance programming. Write in the comments, "I break free from inherited limitations," if you're ready to stop carrying financial patterns that were never actually yours to begin with. The transformation from theoretical understanding to practical application appears in a simple yet profound parable that illustrates how faith in invisible substance creates visible results. Florence Scovel Shinn told of a woman whose purse contained only a few coins and a crumpled bill, yet instead of focusing on this apparent emptiness, she chose to bless her purse daily while visualizing something that couldn't be seen with physical eyes. An invisible coin that, according to her faith, possessed the power to multiply every time it was spent. The hidden truth in this story lies not in magical thinking, but in understanding how consciousness creates experience. Each time this woman opened her purse to make a purchase, she would silently acknowledge this invisible coin and declare that it would return to her multiplied through perfect channels. She wasn't denying her current circumstances or pretending to have money she didn't possess. She was working with what Scovel Shinn called the substance behind substance, the creative energy that eventually manifests as physical resources. Behind the scenes of this woman's daily practice, something remarkable began happening to her financial reality. Unexpected payments arrived from forgotten sources. Friends offered gifts that met her exact needs. Opportunities for steady income appeared through connections she couldn't have planned. Her purse was never empty again because she had learned to work with the invisible current that feeds all visible supply. The invisible coin represented her unshakable faith in the principle that giving and receiving are one continuous movement. The journey into this understanding requires moving beyond the limitation of only believing in what you can currently see or touch. The invisible coin represents the faith that there is always something more available, always another resource ready to appear, always a way for supply to reach you even when conventional channels seem blocked. This isn't about denying practical reality, but about recognizing that practical reality is constantly being shaped by invisible forces of consciousness, intention, and alignment with natural law. Now this parable leads us directly to your own invisible coin activation. I hold the invisible coin of divine supply. It multiplies wherever I send it. My purse is full now, and forevermore. When you speak these words with genuine understanding of the principles we've explored, you're not engaging in fantasy, but planting what Scovel Shinn called seeds of faith in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. This invisible coin becomes your constant reminder that you are never truly without resources because you're connected to infinite creative source. Now, understanding how this invisible coin operates in your daily financial decisions brings us to the specific method for making this faith principle a living reality rather than just a comforting concept. Write in the comments, "I hold the invisible coin," if you're ready to begin working with faith in substance that exists beyond what your physical eyes can currently see, The most profound shift in this entire journey happens when you stop approaching money from the consciousness of someone who needs it and start approaching it from the consciousness of someone who manages it. This distinction between beggar and steward mindset changes everything about how you interact with financial opportunities, how you make spending decisions, and how you respond to both abundance and apparent lack in your experience. The beggar consciousness operates from scarcity, hoarding what little exists, spending with anxiety, constantly worried about running out, making financial decisions from fear of loss rather than vision of possibility. But steward consciousness operates from circulation, understanding that every dollar is part of a divine trust, spending with wisdom and confidence, making financial decisions based on value creation and conscious circulation, rather than desperate accumulation or anxious conservation. The transformation between these two mindsets reveals itself immediately in how you carry yourself around money. A steward doesn't clutch money desperately because they understand their role isn't to create supply, but to wisely direct flow from an inexhaustible source. When you spend from steward consciousness, you're exercising faith in continuous replenishment rather than depleting limited reserves. When you give from steward consciousness, you're participating in divine circulation rather than sacrificing scarce resources. Behind the scenes of this consciousness shift lies what Florence Scovel Shinn called the movement into spiritual authority around finances. Instead of pleading, hoping, or begging for money to appear, you reach a point where you're ready to command resources into form through alignment with what she believed were universal laws. I command money to appear for me now, under grace in perfect ways. This isn't desperate demanding or entitled expecting. It's the conscious direction of creative energy by someone who understands their divine authority to work with invisible forces. The hidden truth about this commanding energy is that it comes not from arrogance or manipulation, but from profound alignment with principles that govern how substance moves from invisible to visible realms. According to her teachings, when you speak from this level of consciousness, you're not trying to force the universe to comply with your personal desires. You're summoning into form what already exists in potential, directing its manifestation through channels that serve everyone's highest good. Now, understanding this distinction between pleading and commanding brings us to the culmination of everything we've explored. Florence Scovel Shinn's exact magic purse affirmation that supposedly contains the precise vibrational frequency needed to transform your relationship with money forever. Write in the comments, I am ready to command abundance, if you feel prepared to step into spiritual authority around your finances rather than continuing to approach money from limitation consciousness. The moment we've been building toward throughout this entire journey arrives with the revelation of Florence Scovel Shinn's exact words. The specific sentence she claimed contained the precise vibrational frequency needed to transform any purse into a magnet for abundance. I see my purse bulging with money, overflowing under grace in perfect ways. According to her teachings, this isn't mere visualization or hopeful imagery. It's what she called a subconscious command that compels your outer reality to conform to the inner vision you're declaring with absolute conviction. The transformation in speaking these words comes from understanding that you're not trying to convince yourself of something untrue or engage in wishful thinking about future possibilities. According to Scovel Shinn's interpretation, you're issuing direct instructions to the part of your mind that creates your experience of reality, telling it exactly what pattern to manifest in your financial affairs. The word bulging suggests abundance beyond normal capacity. Overflowing indicates more than enough, while under grace in perfect ways ensures the manifestation happens through harmonious channels that benefit everyone involved. Behind the scenes of this affirmation lies what she considered the final step. In sealing this transformation, making your declaration public rather than keeping it as a private mental exercise. The instruction to type these exact words in the comments section wasn't presented as casual engagement, but as what she called a sacred contract, a public commitment that supposedly impresses the statement more deeply upon your subconscious mind while simultaneously declaring your intention to live by this truth, rather than just think about it occasionally. The hidden truth about this public declaration process, according to her teachings, is that it moves you from the realm of private hoping into the realm of public commitment. When you write these words where others can see them, you're supposedly creating accountability not just to yourself, but to the principles you're claiming to believe. This public aspect was said to eliminate the internal escape routes that allow doubt to creep back in when circumstances temporarily appear to contradict your declaration. The journey through this final step represents what Scovel Shinn called the moment when theory becomes demonstration, when mental understanding becomes lived reality, when you stop studying abundance principles and start embodying them as your natural way of being. If you've made it this far in our journey together, you've experienced something that goes far deeper than just learning about money techniques. You've walked through a complete transformation of consciousness around abundance. The fact that you stayed with me through every principle, every revelation, every moment of this exploration tells me something important about who you are and what you're ready to create in your life. This type of content, these deep dives into consciousness work and practical spirituality, are exactly what this channel is all about. If this resonated with you, if you found value in approaching abundance from this perspective of inner work rather than external hustle, then you'll want to make sure you don't miss future videos. Hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started with this kind of transformative content. I'd love to know that this message reached the people it was meant to reach. If you made it all the way to this moment, leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," so I can see who took this complete journey with me. There's something powerful about that acknowledgement, that public recognition of the connection we've created through exploring these principles together. If this hour we spent together created any shifts in how you think about money, consciousness, or your own potential for abundance, a like on this video helps more people find this content when they're ready for it. Your engagement literally determines who else gets to discover these concepts. There's a video right here that takes everything we've covered even deeper into the practical application of consciousness work for financial transformation. Click and continue with me over there. Because what we've planted today is just the beginning of what's possible when you understand these principles at this level.